Now, I had a nice piece of paper in my back pocket, which actually reminded me to say a little bit about Malcolm, to introduce this talk. And what I'm going to say, I've got to speak from memory now, but anyway, he's the curator, as it says, I believe here, curator of the Bluebell Railway Museum, but that's not all. He has a house which is actually on the old railway line which goes south of the Bluebell line, and he's got 2 platforms in that garden. But he's conflicted because they've been talking about extending the Bluebell Railway down for 20 years, I gather, and he's conflicted. Do you want a railway station in your back garden? Anyway, he told me the name of the station. I'll ask him to remind you of what the name of the station is.
It's Newark and Chailey.
Okay, so there it is. So with that, I hand over gladly to Malcolm Johnson. Thank you, Malcolm.
Well, hello everybody. Welcome. Glad to see you here. This evening I'm going to take us on a journey, a railway journey through time. Now I'm going to do the driving, but I need a few other people to help me. You can't run a railway with just one person driving a train. So the first person I'm looking for is a guard. Have we got a willing guard here? No? Then I'll do what we do in the railway. I'll say you're going to be the guard. So, you're the guard. Yeah, that's a problem. But you're not safe at the back either. No, you don't look quite right. No, you can rest, don't worry. But that's not enough. You're going to have a whistle as well. Yeah. I've got lots of artefacts, that's what they call them in museums. No, you're still not right. You won't have the time, will you? Well, you're getting better, Now, I'm also going to need someone else, and I'm electing to ask my wife to do this role. She can be the signal man. And if I use an acronym without explaining it, if I use any piece of jargon, just stop the train. Red flag out like that, down like that, we keep going. So we're nearly there. Oh God, you're not right yet. You didn't bring any equipment, you better have a lamp. Oh crikey. Be careful, that's very old. Well, we're getting there, aren't we? I need one more person who I'm sure will volunteer themselves very quickly to be a ticket office clerk.
Oh, I do that.
Oh, is that your job?
You're on the railway.
Well, you know what that's
Kids
for.
for equipment.
We do that, yes.
I work on the railway.
Oh, you're a Bluebell, do you? Jolly good. Well, you recognise these tickets then?
I've seen a few of those. No, I don't recognise these. These are ancient ones, aren't they?
Very ancient, yeah. If you do sell a ticket, you might not get any return up, but that is a railway ticket to travel, isn't it? 2-3 bridges to come for this evening's
3
event.
bridges, yes.
And issued by?
Forces, HMF.
HMS Forces, yeah. So don't forget to date stamp it.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, hang about. There's you people at the back up in there, crikey. You thought you were safe, didn't you? I need a distant outlook, someone who's going to wave the flag should a train come crashing down the line. Thank you, sir. Just wave it viciously, shout like mad, and I'll be off. I haven't given instructions to the guard.
Right.
When I say I'm ready to start, this means the signal is down in my favour. I've got a token. What you have to do is wave that yellow, green flag above your head, blow the whistle, and shout out right away. Then I can start. Are we getting in mood? Right away.
Right away.
No, not yet. In a minute. Yes, I'm Malcolm Johnson, Newark and Chailey, Bluebell Railway. Just met somebody over there who, our booking office clerk, who actually works at the railway, is that right?
I do, yeah. Volunteer, yeah.
Volunteer there like the rest of us. About 1,000 of us, isn't there?
Yes, I would imagine there are, especially
About
at
1,000.
Christmas.
So, nearly ready to go. Who has not been to the Bluebell Railway? You've all been there. Fantastic. Have you all visited the museum? Mostly? Right, okay. Make sure you go to the museum next time you're at the railway. That saved about 10 minutes of the talk, because I haven't got to explain what the Bluebell Railway is. Now, I just gave out a ticket for issue, and there you see it. It's a ticket. Don't see those today, do you, much? Get it on your phone, or you print a QR code at home, rarely see a ticket. That's what's known as an Edmondson ticket. You can see it's a real thing. It's to come to Three Bridges. Bit late in using it because it's clearly a wartime one for Southern Railway. From any station, you just write in what it is, and you can travel first class for an officer as well. So that's get this back on. So yeah, so an officer. It's an Edmondson ticket. Thomas Edmondson invented it. You wouldn't think somebody would have to invent a ticket, would you? Well, they did, because before he came up with this idea, he got quill pen out and then wrote away a permit to travel for the customer. Then he'd write it again, because he'd have to keep it to do the books in the evening. Then he'd have to write in the ledger that he's taken the money. And if you're going on to another line, say not Southern Railway, onto somebody else, of those days it would have been Great Northern Railway he worked for, but another railway, he'd have to put it again into another ledger so they could pay the other company. He came up with a simple idea. You print the ticket, you have a number on the ticket, you know what the number of the ticket was at that price at the start of the day, you know it was at the end, take them away, take one off, that's your number of tickets you've sold, ready reckon up, you know your price of ticket. Bluebell Railway, I'll be supporting this. We still use Edmondson tickets today, and we still use the original presses to print them. So just to explain that little thing. Yeah, I'm a fraud. I'm not a real curator. I'm not a museum professional. I'm an electrical engineer, and that's what we used to call ourselves anyway. I'm an electrical engineer. I'm not a historian or anything like that. I'm just a straightforward engineer who likes being a curator. I get to play with a different sort of technology now. Anybody recognise what that loco is? Flying Scotsman, I heard. Flying Scotsman. Apparently the most famous locomotive in the world. That's a shot taken at the Bluebell last August. Did any of you see the Flying Scotsman last August? You were on it? Yeah? You were smiling the whole time, weren't you? Yeah. People come in their thousands, tens of thousands. They jump for joy when they see this locomotive. It's incredible the effect it has. You wouldn't need the National Health Service if you had plenty of Flying Scotsmen. People will be so happy. Why is it famous? That's the subject of a totally different talk. Now, I've got different views, you see, because I think this is the most famous locomotive in the world. I'm not going to ask you to guess what its name is. It's Stepney. It's in Steamworks, part of our museum at Sheffield Park. I think it's the most famous locomotive in the world, because anyone who's under 60 surely read the Thomas the Tank Engine books, yeah? Or in later years they would have seen the cartoons, etc. So nearly everybody under 60 knows it as Stepney, most famous loco in the world. I think people come from all over the world to see Stepney. Last summer I had a Japanese gentleman comes into the museum looking very worried. He speaks 3 words of English. Where is Stepney? Worried. Don't worry, I say, I'll take you to Stepney. Big smile, delighted. People love Stepney. Most photographed locomotive definitely in the world. The people next to it saying, I hate to break this to you, but this is the best friend of Thomas the Tank Engine. You cannot go and see Thomas. He's not real, honest. But Stepney is. Yeah, so best friend of Thomas. Now, you've been to the museum, quite a few of you, you notice what you see. You walk through the 1882 waiting room doors, you come into the museum. On the left there's a booking office, turn right into a large modern museum. And if you haven't been there, that's what's going to greet you. If you go through it, right out to the other end, there's an 1866 signal box where you can learn to be a signalman and learn everything about signalling. I boast that I can teach nearly everybody, well, there's some exceptions, to be a signalman in 2 minutes. And to their amazement, they do it. Just 2 minutes. If you don't believe me, turn up and find out. Now this is what I'm supposed to be talking about. Well, I do have the signal with my favour guard, and I do have a token guard. I'm just waiting for the right of way guard. Right away. You've got to shout right away. I'll do it. Right away. Okay. I can get... Yeah, you can't get the staff anymore, I'm afraid. That's terrible. Yeah, okay, here, this is the subject. I'm there at last. 1923 to 1947, Southern Railway 100. 100 years since it was created. So what? So what? What's so special about this? Well, it was created by government, by an Act of Parliament. And it was finished by an Act of Parliament. That makes it quite unusual. It wasn't someone thinking up the commercial enterprise. What's very special is this is probably the only railway in the country that has made a profit throughout nearly all the time, a significant profit, and was successful. The customers were satisfied. Wouldn't you love to see a railway like that today?
On time.
And just to explain, in case you haven't realised, that isn't the Southern Railway that's around today, where you go and pay a fortune to get your ticket. Of course, you don't get a ticket anymore, to get something turn up on your phone so you can go to travel. This is a different Southern Railway, 23 to 47. I call it the romantic age of railways. Now you hear people talking about the golden age of railways. I don't think there ever was a golden age of railways. It's always been a hard grind. From the very beginning, we'll find out where that is, to today. It's a hard grind. But I see this as a romantic age of railways. It's the newsreels of the period. We've all seen them. There's the many movies made about it. Here's Brief Encounters, Noel Coward, the play and the film, gives us that image of when railway was so close to everything we were doing in life. And people actually identified with it. So the romantic age of railways. 100 years, it was created, but why? I'm afraid you've got to go right back to the beginning to answer that question. When I say back to the beginning, it says 1600, but historians tell us that the ancient Greeks, the ancient Romans, even the early Chinese civilizations had railways. And if you think about it, when the first person invented the wheel, and they thought they cracked it, and the royalties would keep them rich for the rest of their life, they then tried to move it along and discovered that the ground wasn't smooth. It was bumpy, it was damp, it was soft, and it didn't work too well. Now, that didn't worry a lot of people, but it certainly worried people who had to carry heavy loads, people in mines who wanted to get things out. So you can guess it wasn't long before they came up with something rather like this, just bits of tree laid down to roll it along. That soon passed along and they laid down wooden planks and then eventually cast iron planks, and we started to get towards the railways of today. Now, when did that happen? Well, we know at the end of the 16th century, our government was getting concerned about the fact that the things that were being mined in the ground, coal, iron ore, etc., was not easily moved across the country. Yes, they could have a railway from the pit face to the pit head, but when they wanted to roll it out to get to the nearest waterfalls, there'd be a problem, because the landowners certainly didn't want a railway crossing across their land, so they wouldn't let them. It's just the same today, isn't it? If you think about High Speed 2, nobody wants the railway, so they couldn't do it. So the government, they were quite good governments in those days, decided to generate an Act of Parliament that would enable anybody who went to Parliament with a bill to open a railway, if they got consent, they gave really, really powerful means at their disposal to get that railway completed. Compulsory purchase, right to stop people crossing the railway. Incredible. That started things going. That Act of Parliament was 1604. The first railway across land, a private railway across land, was 1604, a long time ago. Needless to say, it wasn't pulled by a steam locomotive. Let's go back to that one. 1803, the world's first public freight railway. 200 years to get to that, to a public railway. And it was, like here, that's a painting that you can see in our museum. It was painted in 1823, and it shows a public railway. You would take your cart with your load to the railway station, pull it onto the track, and then one horse would pull the whole load. Here we see the horse, good old horse there, pulling 5 loads of coal. Looks hard work. There's reports that they poured as much as 12 or 14 carts along the track by one horse. While we're talking about horses, often neglected, when you talk about railways, everyone rushes to a steam railway. Think about the horse. Interesting fact here. When British Railways was created in 1948, they inherited from the railways of the day more horses than locomotives. Yeah? More horses than locomotives. That was 48. But then, do you know, you probably know this, but the last steam engine was retired off of British Railways in 1968. The last horse was retired in 1967, less than a year before. The horse nearly outlived the steam engine. Yeah, the horse played a huge part in railways, and we'll go on to that. Who knows, they might do again if we have to get rid of coal and got no oil supplies and everything else. Who knows? But there we go. So that's it. You can see that in the museum, this painting. The railway I'm talking about is not far from here. It's the Surrey Iron Railway. It went from Wandsworth, Basant, where the boats would come in, and it was built all the way through Croydon down to Godstone. And it was Iron Railway, first public railway in the world. And if you look at it, you'll see that if you wanted to transport a ton of dung, which you might want to, I don't know, then you'd have to pay a penny a mile to do it. Coal, 3 pennies a mile. Coal was a lot heavier, so it would. This is the public railway. Now, you saw the cast iron rail. Have I done that yet? No, I haven't. Come on to it. If you look here, this is what it looks like. Cast iron rail stone sleepers, built to last. Well, up to a point. You can see that again, you can see that in our museum. They thought that the steam locomotive would never catch on. The horse was the best means of doing it. And then 1842, London Brighton Railway opened up with a steam railway. They closed 3 years later. They were broke, gone. Nobody did it. And they did ask George Stephenson, a man I mentioned a number of times this evening. They did ask George Stephenson if he would convert their railway to a steam railway. And he said words to this effect: "You're having a laugh, boy. Put a steam locomotive on that, they'll just crack. They're cast iron. They cannot take the weight." So that was the end of the railway. So 1803, 1804, we get the first public railway. 1825, and note 1825. 1825, we had the first passenger railway and first public steam railway. That's next year. 200 years. Next year. 200 years to the first passenger railway and the first public steam railway. It's going to be great celebrations throughout the nation, without a shadow of a doubt. I think the rest of the world would just ignore the fact that we're going to celebrate it like mad. But then we have to sort of stop and think, perhaps, are we doing the right thing in celebrating it? I'll come to that. So that was that. It was Stockton-Darlington. Stockton-Darlington. And it was built as a freight railway to move coal from up near, just north of Darlington, down through to Stockton-on-Tees, where it can be put on a ship and transported. That's what it's for. But some bright spark says, well, why don't we move passengers as well? Seems a good idea. You've got the railway there. And it opened. This is the line of it. Shildon, where the National Railway Museum has their museum today. Darlington, Stockton. And there's the mine. And you have to get the coal out to there. If I tell you, once they've opened the railway, the price of coal in Stockton dropped by 2/3. That's the cost of having to move that across land. Dropped by 2/3. The huge difference it made, having a railway, was phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. The first locomotive that pulled a load on that railway was that one there. Locomotion 1. That was its name. Locomotion 1. And it's the first locomotive that pulled a freight train, as it was. The initial one to do freight trains on a railway. No more horses, we had a Locomotion 1. It's got that claim to fame. It's also the first locomotive that went into preservation. This was state-of-the-art technology at 1823. By 1830 it was old hat. It was soon retired, pushed into the corner of the shed. The people who built it felt very affectionate about it. They kept it there. They didn't scrap it, they kept it there. Then, when it got to about 1840, they thought, wouldn't it be a good idea to restore this locomotive so it could run? And they restored it to its original condition, and they got it running. This photograph wasn't taken in 1825, it was taken in 1925, celebrating 100 years of the Stockton-Darlington Railway. 100 years. There they are going mad. You can still see that locomotive today if you go to Shildon. It's still there. It doesn't run anymore, but it's still there. So perhaps this is the most famous locomotive in the world, not the Flying Scotsman. I'll pass no judgment. I've got to say, just to temper the celebrations of next year, that the first passenger services that were pulled on that railway were pulled by horse. You couldn't expect people to travel at a startling 20 miles per hour, could you? They'd be terrified. And all that nasty exhaust coming out of the locomotive? No way. The Locomotion 1 pulled the freight trains. A horse pulled the passenger trains. The Locomotion 1 didn't pull the passenger service till 1833. So 1930, and we get another huge step forward. The first steam-hauled passenger railway. Intercity, Liverpool to Manchester. Now, who built that first, the Stockton-Darlington Railway was George Stephenson. His name keeps cropping up. Fantastic engineer, totally self-educated. Didn't have a days of formal education in his life. Self-educated. So he built that. So when they wanted to build a Liverpool-Manchester railway, they went to George, and he started to build it, which he did, and he was very good at it. It gets towards 1830, and they need a steam locomotive. So they had the famous Rainbow trials, which you've probably heard about. And his son, Robert, entered a locomotive, which was called Rocket. And there was another, I think it was 5 locomotives entered. Now the one that won was Rocket, and it became famous because of it. It won. It won because it was the only one to finish the distance. So there's no competition really. So it became the first locomotive. It had the best type of technology around the world. That Robert went around and he found what was the best things happening at the time. He poured them all into one locomotive and he produced something that was so different to locomotion that it was incredible. Locomotion 1, a totally different animal that did perform. That's what it looked like. Guess where the first class compartments are? It's at the lower bit, of course. The front, you've got, so didn't get a seat, and you've got an awful lot of exhaust falling on you. So, it was let loose. The cat was out of the bag. Railways were booming, and they boomed. 1830s, 1840s, there was massive, uncontrolled expansion of railways. And I mean massive. And it was uncontrolled. Government would not intervene. Government just allowed it to happen. If you could get a bill through, great. You'll get a railway. Can you imagine what happened? You got people building duplicate lines, triple lines to various between cities. There's only so many people who want to travel, only so much freight, and it was being divided by 2, by 3, and the costs were multiplied by 2 or 3. They didn't make money. They got into huge financial difficulties. Where did they get the money from to build the railways? Mostly it was people with their life savings, turning up and buying shares. It was the in thing. It was the modern thing. The dot-com revolution. It was the dot-com revolution of the day. Everyone wanted a bit of it. So money was poured into it. Many lost their money. Many got no return from their money. It was going nowhere. So there was a problem. The government chose not to control the development of railways in the country. By 1850, just about every town and every village had a railway and a railway station. That's just a mere 25 years from the beginning. In those 25 years, they'd laid down 6,000 miles of track. 6,000 miles of track. That is 2/3 of the total railway track that we have today in the country. 2/3 of it was laid down in that period of time without the means that we have today. I think that is quite staggering. But it created its problems. There's a map, a quick look at the map there, showing that already by 1850 there's railway lines linking everywhere in the country. Then we move on, 1897. The very last major railway to be built for 100 years, to where across the Channel Tunnel, Rowling was built in 1997. 100 years passed. It was the last railway to be built. Why? Nearly everywhere had a railway. Why build another one? And the returns were minimal, absolutely minimal. I don't know if you can see this, it's a bit small, but this is the Great Central Railway. This was the last railway to be built before the CTRL, 1897. If you look at it, we've got Leeds up there, Manchester here, that's, what have we got there? We've got Doncaster, Grimsby, coming down through Loughborough, Leicester, down to London. It looks remarkably like High Speed 2, doesn't it? Oh no, sorry, High Speed 1.4. There's not much left. Don't know what it'll be by the time it finishes. So very similar. This was 1997. Unfortunately, there's a chap called Dr. Beach and he closed it. That wasn't a sensible thing to do, was it really? Because we're building it again now. This was the only significant railway that we've built since 1897. The cross-channel link. Any other major country in the world got an achievement as poor as that? I don't think so. This is what it looked like at the turn of the century, 1900. That shows only the main lines. If you were to lay on top of that all the minor railways, the spurs, the links, the branch lines, it'll be totally covered. It was that massive. All's going well, is it? Comes to 1914, railways are terribly run down. Been not much money, no money to invest in stock, to invest in the track, and it's looking pretty grim. And then we have a world war. The nation depended on that railway. The government immediately took control of the railways. They had to. They had to force them to cooperate. Get them delivering. Now, there was a few problems in doing that. But they got them to do it. They took control of the railways, and it worked. I don't know if you saw it, but Michael Portillo did a series about the contribution of the railways of Britain to the victory of World War I. Very good series it was indeed. He went as far as saying that, that we probably wouldn't have won that war without the role of the railways. But imagine what was happening. Already run down, then the railways having to be worked even harder to deliver the war effort. Ammunition, supplies had to get across the English Channel. So they're working even harder. To make it worse, materials were hard to come by. To make it worse, most of the men who were working on the railway were sent off to the trenches to work. The good news was that the women were brought in to do it. It was good news because you could pay them a third of the salary of a man. So your costs went down. So one bit of good news for the railways, they were paying less for their labour. Now I'd like to show you here a lovely photograph of what the railways looked like during World War I. They were a defence zone railways, just like government buildings. If you took a photograph, you're likely to be arrested as a traitor, put up against a wall and shot. So there's very few photographs of that period. So I thought I'd do the next best thing and show you a locomotive that went to war. This locomotive actually went to North France to take part in the First World War. So you think it must be a pretty good locomotive. This is a South Eastern and Chatham Railway P-class locomotive, and they were built by the chief engineer, Harry Wainwright, who thought himself to be a really good railway engineer. He much admired the London Brighton South Coast Railway locomotive class A1, the one like Stepney. Really admired it. Built by William Stroudy, a fantastic little locomotive, huge power. He said, I'll build another one, make it a bit bigger. I've got the same sort of needs because I've got very lightly constructed tracks, I can't have big locos, and I'm going to make it good. So he built 8 of them, and then the shed masters pleaded with him not to. They ran for a matter of weeks sometimes before the shed master would stuff them into the shed and say leave it there, or it was used for shunting duties. If I tell you that 8 were built and 4 are in preservation, you might think that's because they were wonderful. No, it wasn't. It's because they were never used. Didn't wear out. Simple as that. So anyway, when it came to a locomotive being required to go to the front to be blown to pieces, they didn't think about it for very long. Send Primrose. We call that one Primrose at the Bluebell Railway. 27 people. Send Primrose. Bit of luck, it'll never come back. But it came back totally unscathed, and it's still around. It's under heavy restoration at the moment at the Bluebell Railway. We come to the end of the war. Now, it was probably the only time in history that the government didn't want a war to end. For some very good reasons. Hostilities finished in 1918, but the war didn't finish to 1920. We had to drag it out. First of all, I didn't want all these troops being demobbed and creating a revolution to overthrow the monarchy because they were so discontented with what had happened during the war. But even bigger problem is that they'd have to give control of the railways back to the railway companies, and that would have been a complete and utter disaster. They would quickly have gone broke because the railways were now in an appalling state after the First World War. The government appointed what they thought was needed, a Minister of Transport, Eric Geddes, the first ever Minister of Transport for this country. And he was told, go away and find something that's going to solve this problem. This is the man. He was no fool, he was a railway man, he was in charge of the railways in North France during the war. He knew what he was doing. He immediately said, we're going to have to nationalise the railways. People in power, the 2 big parties, were the Conservatives and the Liberals. They do not want to nationalise a railway, they don't want to nationalise anything. What we say today, small government was their idea, no intervention. So he'd say, go away, think again, come up with another idea. And there was a fudge. There was 120 companies, railway companies in the country, 120 railway companies. And his idea was, I can't nationalise them, let's reduce them. And I'll take them down to 4, force them to merge to just 4 companies. And I'll make them geographical, so there's very limited opportunity for competition. If there's no competition, they can keep their prices up and hopefully will finance the regrowth of the railway. So that's what took place. The bill went through Parliament in 1921. 1922, it was totally enacted and the legal entities of the 4 new companies took place. But it didn't actually happen to 1923. So we just celebrated that on New Year's Eve last year. That's when it happened, 100 years. That's the 4. You're probably familiar with the 4: Southern Railway, Great Western, London North Eastern, and Midland Scottish, London Midland Scottish. Southern Railway were the odd ones out. At that time, the money was in freight. That's where you get your income from. If you take, let's go back again, if you take London North Eastern, LNER, they had massive amount of freight. They were sitting pretty. You take LMS, they had quite a lot of freight and a reasonable amount of passenger and commuter passenger, but a lot of freight. Great Western had some passenger traffic, but not a lot, and a reasonable amount of freight from the coal mines. The odd ones out with Southern Railway. They had no freight, nearly no freight, very, very, very little. They had a lot of passenger traffic, but the passenger traffic was like it is today. Everyone went at the start of the day, came back at the end of the day. The railways were empty in the middle of the day, emptied on Saturday afternoons, on Sundays. So they had an absolutely awful profile. They were doomed, weren't they? We'll find out whether they were. What did the two companies with the biggest freight do? They thought, right, we're sitting pretty. We've got routes, and what's our prestige route? London to Edinburgh. What we want is fast, powerful locomotives. LNER, they already had Flying Scotsman built. They came to service 1923. A few years after that, they upgraded it because they saw that they wanted to be the power kings, the sexy locomotives. They upgraded Flying Scotsman to an A3 class. Was it 32? I forget the date. 1932, Flying Scotsman took the 100-mile-per-hour record. The first locomotive recorded at 100 miles per hour. They were going for speed. This famous locomotive, is this the most famous locomotive in the world? No. There's some doubt about which one is, isn't there now? Mallard, 126 miles per hour in 1938. Still, they were heading for speed and power. It got the headlines. They got all the glory in the national newspapers. People thought, well, they thought, that's good, we get lots of passengers onto our railway. There was something slightly wrong in that. Although the 3 companies had lots of freight, but not Southern, something called road transport had come along. Road transport was stealing all the freight business from the railways. So they were losing money on their freight. Passengers was really important. If they'd focused on passenger, the real answer to the passengers, they would have done a lot better, but they didn't. So there we got Mallard, Duchess of Hamilton. Everybody's seen Duchess of Hamilton at the National Railway Museum? Beautiful locomotive. Princess Coronation class, also built for speed and power. But what did Southern do? Oh, that's not quite so sexy, is it, I'm afraid? They're doing their best to make it look sexy, but it's not. Electric. You know, I'm sure you're all aware, electric traction, the characteristic of the DC series wound motor, maximum torque at minimum speed, phenomenal. It's just what you want for traction. What did that mean? It meant if you're in a place where there's large population densities like London suburbs, where you operated commuter trains stopping at every station. All the time you were stopping and starting. Steam locomotives are very poor at accelerating under load. Very, very poor. They also are very heavy and they're poor at braking. So if you take a locomotive, steam locomotive, it might have a top speed of 120 miles per hour or something silly, but you take it the time over A where it's got to stop, and it's very, very poor. Having an electric traction, you can do A to B fast, really fast. This is one of the ads that Southern Railway put out. Ensure a good morning. Speed. They didn't mean speed over 100 miles per hour. They meant, I'm going to get you from A to B as fast as possible. That's what people wanted. They would get A to B as fast as possible. Because they managed to get these electric trains travelling from A to B as fast as possible, there was more capacity to bring more trains onto the railway. Hence, they were more frequent. And then comfort. Why was there more comfort? Those nasty, smelly steam locomotives, all those smuts, all that soot. Far more comfortable to have clean electricity. This is one of the Southern Railway's sexy locomotives. This is a two-HAL, H-A-L, two-HAL locomotive. Two means two cars, so the sets were two cars. I'll get to that again. 1, 2, H-A, half, L, lavatory. So it only had half the cars with lavatories. Not sexy like the Flying Scotsman or Mallard, is it? No. They also had one class that was a 4-lav. You work out what that was for. So what formed, and this is very, very interesting, what formed the Southern Railway? Well, it was London, Brighton, South Coast Railway. And it was South Eastern and Chatham Railway. But we pause there, because South Eastern and Chatham Railway was in fact an operating railway owned by two companies, South Eastern Railway and London Chatham Dover Railway. But in the late 1880s they got together and said, we're killing each other by competition. This is crazy, we're killing each other, let's combine. Then we won't compete with each other and we can push the prices up. That's what they did. So actually, when it came to 1923 and grouping, bringing them together, they were in a good financial position. If you take London, Brighton, South Coast Railway, operated down through London, Brighton, not a lot of competition. Their competition was mainly with South Eastern and Chatham Railway and trying to build lines before South Eastern and Chatham could build them and take their business. So it was building unprofitable lines. That was their competition. They also had competition on the other side with LSWR. LSWR had competition from Great Western Railway, and they could have had a lot of competition from London, Brighton. But did they? No. 1838, really lovely. 1838, they got an agreement between the two companies that said, in the fringe areas we will not compete. Instead, we will form a joint railway. We'll both operate it and we take a share of the profits, so there's no competition. 1838. Is that important? My word is important, because it meant that both those companies ended up in a very strong financial position by the time it got to 1923. In fact, on Saturday, for the museum, I bought a cat badge. See if I've got one here. That sort of thing. A cat badge. Paid £770 for it. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. But why? Because it was such an important thing. It was for a railway that was a joint railway between London, Brighton, South Coast Railway and London South Western Railway, where they made this union in 1838 that meant they stayed in a fairly uncompetitive position and made profit. It's a significant period in the history of those railways. So yes, we paid that for it, and it was called, the company was called the, let's get it right, the South West and South Coast Railway. It wasn't anywhere near the South Coast, and it wasn't in the South West, but let's forget that. That's what it was called. So significant things. These people were good at not competing with each other, and so could stay with higher prices and more competitive. I might add that London, Brighton, South Coast Railway was the meanest railway company in the whole country. Paid the lowest salaries to everybody. Absolutely appalling. What made Southern Railway successful while the other three lost money? Every organisation needs a good leader. This is Herbert Walker. He spent the whole time with the whole existence of Southern Railway working for them as general manager or director. He was brilliant. The railway administrator without parallel. When the railways were formed, there were three general managers, one from each of the three big companies or three big railways that were running at the time. By the time we got to the end of the first year, nothing was happening, but nothing happened whatsoever. So the other two, who were near to retirement, just didn't want to cooperate, didn't want to do anything. And he went to the directors and just said, put me in charge and I'll sort this out. So it was 1924 before he actually got into a position of power. The first thing in there is electric traction. 24 he was appointed. By 1928 they'd already done the first section of the re-electrification of the London-Brighton line. In just those 4 years he'd moved it on to getting it done, and he was moving. That's an incredible achievement. Electric traction was not new to these companies. 24 and a half miles of HVAC, HVAC catenary overhead system, 24 miles. That was London Brighton. London Brighton South Coast Railway were there. That was the leading edge of technology. Throughout the world, let's have it AC, overhead, it works. And of course, that's what we have today. It's higher voltage, but it's what we have today. But London South Western Railway had the biggest amount, 57 miles of LV, low voltage, third rail DC. Yeah? Is it so good? At the time it wasn't thought to be so good, and perhaps today it's not thought to be so good. In fact, Network Rail, it must have been more than 10 years ago, said that it was doomed. They're going to scrap it and go overhead. Well, it hasn't happened. And I don't think it'll happen in the next 20 years unless somebody can find the money. So I think this might not be seen to be the right decision to go to that third rail, but it's lasted the test of time. And right at the very end there, very short distance of London Underground, 500 fourth rail. But who was the man in charge? Herbert Walker. He was an LSWR man, and he said, we know about this technology, tried and tested, we've been using it for some years now, we're going to go for third rail DC. And so that's what's happened. So we got it. What else did they need? Very little freight business, passenger traffic peaking at rush hours. They needed marketing. They needed marketing like the country's never seen before, because they had to get people onto their trains. Middle of the day, weekends, any time apart from rush hour times, they wanted people. They weren't going to get it from freight. So they were excellent at marketing. There was a publication for nearly everything. Go on holiday in Kent, by train. Go fishing, by train. Go to Sussex on holiday, by train. Go walking, of course, by train. Go to the continent, by train. Hey, you wanted to get your kids into a public school? We'll show you how to get there, by train. Continent, by train. Outdoor walking. Southern Home's a great one. You buy this, inside was a postcard, send it to Waterloo. It's the head office of Southern Railway. Say what you wanted. I want a 3-bedroom semi within 15 minutes travel of the city, and they'll send you, as an estate agent would, all the details of the houses and where the nearest railway station was. They do it. They're an estate agent. Isle of Wight. Have I mentioned that on grouping, I don't think I have on grouping, there were 7 railway companies in the Isle of Wight. Seven. So there's 2 today. You see, it seems excessive, doesn't it? 2, but 7, unbelievable. There were 17 in the area of Southern Railway, the South East. 17 companies. Sounds a lot till you realise there were 120 companies, and that meant that the other 3s, the LNER, the GWR, and the LMS, that they had about 35 companies to come into one. 35 companies. Could it ever work? I like this one, picnic and pleasure parties. We don't have pleasure parties anymore, do we? Get more holidays, go to Paris. Now this one, this was a good one. This is a photograph, and I've actually shortened it a bit. It's a photograph of what's in our museum. It's a relief map. It's about 7 foot long by about 4.5 feet high. It's big. It's really big. It's a relief map, a contour map. The red lines, the red marks are the railway lines, and the black writing you can see are the stations. This was in, I think it was at Waterloo for many, many years. I've been in the museum at Sheffield Park, the Bluebell, for 12 years. I've never had a visitor who could work out what that was for. What was the message? Not one can work out why. Now, how many people who went to the Waterloo station looked at this and thought, oh, that's a good idea, I'll get the message and I'll go and do that? I don't think many. If you look at this enlargement, you'll see the railway lines in red, you'll see the stations marked, and you see what looks like battle sites. If you look a bit closer, you'll see they're actually 2 golf clubs. Yeah, they're golf clubs. And the message is, we can show you where the golf clubs are, so this Sunday or Saturday afternoon you'll get on a train, travel to that station, buy a ticket to go there, give us some more revenue, and you can play a round of golf. Can you believe it? Every niche market they went for. Cycling, you can't think of anything. It was extreme, but they had to do that to survive and to succeed, and they did it. They did other things. Now this is looks like your friendly local, where you go and have a pint. It's actually a railway carriage. This is a railway carriage. And this was a bullied carriage. It was the 2nd chief engineer of Southern Railway. And you could turn up there, notice the oak beams, all the windows were taken out, so you couldn't realise that you were actually travelling in a train. The vibration might have made you think there was an earthquake, I guess. But so you have your pint, something to eat, and you enjoyed your journey. That's what it looked like on the outside. Yes, red brick, beams, the lot. Convincing. Well, perhaps not. You could watch a film. Southern coach here. Go to the cinema whilst you're travelling home from work or going on holiday. Then you could have luxury. 1932, the electrification of the London-Brighton line for 3rd rail. 1932, a Pullman train. A train completely made up of Pullman cars. I don't know if you know the story of Pullman, but the American company, they made their money by taking one of their cars, putting it on the back of a train, operated by a couple of the companies, paying a tariff to that company, then charging a premium to the passenger to come in. Then, of course, you sell them food and drink. Very successful formula. The first ever complete train of Pullman, there's been very, very few of them, was London to Brighton in 1882. This is 1932, and it's electric. This was the actual train was owned by Southern Railway. Not owned by Pullman. A very big difference. But the service within the train was provided by Pullman, so you still got the luxury service. 1932, 1972, before they closed this train and closed it down. And there's still people today complaining, I'm sure. Sir Laurence Olivier, you might remember, complained bitterly when they took kippers off the menu. Do you remember that story? Yeah. Beautiful, beautiful. It's called a 5-bell, 5-B-E-L. So that's 5 cars B for Brighton, E for electric, and you can guess what the L's for, can't you? Right. So innovation, Maunsell locomotive, Bullied locomotive designs, 2 chief engineers, Maunsell. Now, when people look at the history of railways, they think about William Stanley, Sir Nigel Presley, both related as the great men for railway design. They made these locos, the Flying Scotsman, the Princess Coronation, the Mallard. They did that. They were thought to be, but in the day, the railway engineers admired what Maunsell did. He produced locomotives that were fit for purpose. They didn't do 120 miles per hour. They didn't need to. He produced reliable designs that did the job that was needed. Bullied came along later, 1938, and he was planning for the future, looking to the end. He was using new technology that would keep the steam engine going as he saw it was needed for many decades to come. And he was doing that. I didn't notice any of that happening anywhere else around the country. This is Lord Nelson, the Lord Nelson class locomotive, still in service at the Midhants Railway, beautiful locomotive. We have here a schools class locomotive, Stowe, again designed and built by Maunsell. This is at the Bluebell. We got an S15 at the Bluebell. We've got a U-class here, known as U-boats, at the Bluebell Railway, and it's pulling the Golden Arrow service. Probably some of you know this, but the French tricolour, the Union flag of the United Kingdom was at the front. It was at the front of every single train that was pulled under the Golden Arrow. Golden Arrow, London to Paris. A dining service, and it crossed the Channel. Fantastic. The same flags were used on every single service. The tricolour and the Union, identical. The same one was used for every single service. You can go and see those flags in the museum. We still have those flags. We haven't washed them. If we did, they'd probably fall apart. So we haven't washed them. But they're still there. So that's a U-class. Then we come on to Maunsell. We got a queue there. Now we get into Bullied. Looks less like a steam locomotive of the past. You can't see a chimney. Airline design. Lots of different technical innovations in that locomotive. That's Blackmore Vale at the Bluebell Railway. Here's one of a West Country Coast locomotive. I think it's Sir Archie, might be wrong. In BR days. This is Sir Archibald Sinclair, a Bluebell Railway locomotive, a light Pacific, Bullied designed. This one was designed during the war. If you've never seen one before, you'd be a bit shocked. It's a Marmite. It's known as a Marmite locomotive. You either love it or you hate it. Now, I love it. I think they're really, really good. Bluebell had one of these, the only one that survives, running for 10 years on the Bluebell line, and it was magnificent. It was honed down. Everything, there's a Q-class, Maunsell design, but everything that you could take off of it, they took off. The frames were paper thin. But what it meant was that he used precious little carbon, he used precious little steel to build it. And the fact that one lasted is just a miracle. Very last design by Oliver Bullied. Yes, this is a steam locomotive. It does look like a diesel. It's got a cab at each end, one at that end and one at that end. The coal and water is held within. The driver can go at one end to the other, just like a diesel. Bullied, designing for the future. This was what was needed. Well, we've gone round a circle here because 1939 and we have World War II. The same problem. Most of the railways in the country, the 3 other than Southern, were very run down. Very run down, and then we had to make excess use of the railways to get us through the World War. We get through the World War, and this time I can produce a photograph taken of a station. This is York Railway Station, bombed to pieces. It's a beautiful railway station. It's totally restored. 1945, the war ends, general election, the Labour government elected Clem Attlee. and he wastes no time in saying we need to nationalise the railways. Was it a thing that should have happened in 1923? Almost certainly, but it happened again. And perhaps if it had happened in 1923, it would have been in a better position in 1948, the nationalisation. You can't rerun history, you never know, but I think it's highly likely that would be the case. So Southern Railway. I started off with the suggestion that perhaps they were a special railway. They were profitable throughout their history. They had good leadership. Importantly, they saw the value of electrification. If only the rest of our railways had seen that same importance, we'd have a much better railway system today. We certainly wouldn't have a load of diesels running around. And they had this fantastic marketing. Understand your customer, give good service, understand their needs, make them feel happy, give them fast, frequent trains. And they also had that technical innovation that was needed. So Southern Railway started from a good position compared to others because they had 3 successful companies who were making money, but they finished in an even stronger position. If the war hadn't have happened, what would have happened? How further would Southern Railway gone on? I don't think we would have seen an awful lot of development in diesels. I think they would have pushed ahead with electric. An interesting fact from the Bluebell point of view is a part of the London, the Lewis East Grinstead Railway is the link between Haywards Heath through Ardingly to Horsted Keynes. That was electrified in 1939. To take place also in 39 at the end, and in 1940 was the electrification of the East Grinstead to Lewis line. And what I suggest is if that had taken place, so it was all electrified, would the railway have closed in 1955? They didn't close the link between Horsted Keynes and Haywards Heath until 1963, 8 years after trying to close for the first time the Lewis East Grinstead line. So it lasted 8 years. How much longer would that link have lasted if the rest of the line was electrified? We'll never know, but I suggest it would have gone on and on. And I think there's every possibility that they wouldn't have closed that railway, even under Beeching. Every possibility. But we'll never know. So it could totally transform what happened to that railway. It would never have become a preserved railway if that had happened. So it's interesting to replay history and say what if. But what would have saved them wouldn't have been steam trains, it would have been electrification. Okay, I see a signal at danger, which means I've come to a stop on the end of the journey. I hope you've enjoyed the story of Southern, and that you can form your own opinions about how exceptional Southern was or were not. But thanks for coming, thanks for listening. I hope those who haven't been to the Bluebell Railway, which I think everyone has, come and come again, and make sure you do come to the museum. Make sure you do. There's a railway, and I'll finish there. Thank you.
Questions? Anybody? Do you take questions?
I will take questions, yeah.
Right. Have we got some questions?
You say about electrification. I remember reading about Mr. Beeching's lived in East Grinstead.
He did indeed.
Yeah, and that wasn't electrified until about 1982, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's
strange he lived in East Grinstead and the line existed. Then I can remember as a boy, the electric line used to only go to Gillingham.
Yeah.
Then after that period, in the mid-50s I think it was, it went on to Thanet, didn't it?
Yeah.
And then there was also the Uckfield line stopped. I know a guy that ordered all the kit to electrify that, and it was all sent down on Bournemouth line.
Yeah.
And as you say, if it was electrified, was it, you know, sort of be there today?
Well, I think that very likely. And after nationalisation in '48, I think they totally lost their way with. Well, first of all, there was not the money there. Got to be fair. There's not the money there to invest. But it was a big mistake investing in diesels. What money was available should have gone into electrification. We had the East Coast line being electrified, which is very good. Not much else has happened. Not much else has happened ever since then. So, yeah, if something had continued in existence and there hadn't been a war, then what would have happened? I think there'd be a lot more electrification for sure.
Other questions? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that talk, Malcolm.
Okay.
Really interesting. About the number of companies in each of the regions, why were there so many? Is it a factor of like one per line and then repeat?
There's a mixture of reasons why there were so many. Some of them were quite good reasons, like they were joint railways. So rather than compete, join forces and build it together. Half the cost of construction, and make sure you're not battling with each other and ticket prices drop. Part of it was that. The other thing was it was just mindless competition. Why were there two companies competing into Kent? So we end up with two lines and two railway stations in the Medway towns, Canterbury, Why? Why did they end up with 6 railway lines and 6 companies going into Cardiff? Mindless competition. So there was definitely mindless competition. Some of the numbers were just because they did have these joint railways, and others because they were very small railways. Kent East Sussex Railway is a good example, still in preservation. Tiny, the Colonel Stevens Railway, tiny little railway that survived. And he had and he did survive really well because he had a game plan that worked at various places around the country. But what I would argue is that if there had been government control, that we didn't have this laissez-faire approach from government throughout the 19th century and then into the 20th century, there would have been control and it would never have happened. Quite easy to say, not for Parliament, not to permit 2 people to come with the same proposition to run 2 railways side by side. Very, very easy. So I would lay the blame squarely at government for doing it. And that's why we ended up with the chaos that you'd expect if you haven't got somebody controlling the scene. People argue today about small government. Well, if government gets too small, you get chaos. And that's an example of it. Does that answer the question? Yeah.
How much does Bluebell Railway cost each year?
That's an almost impossible question to answer. I'll give you though some money that actually is, I think, quite powerful. If we want to run a train from Sheffield Park to East Grinstead and bring it back again, and all you consider is the basic running cost of coal, water and lubrication, it costs £1,000 a trip. So you run 6 of those a day, that's £6,000. You've got £6,000 of customer ticket to come in to pay for that. That is the price, and it's rising. That's last year's price. I hate to think what it is now. So it costs a hell of a lot of money. Bluebell Railway, any preservation railway, can only survive with volunteers. We have to have some employees, but volunteers, in one area there, we have to have a lot of volunteers to do it. On a normal running day, we probably have 70 people working on the railway who are volunteers, plus probably 7 to 10 paid employees. That's the sort of cost thing. Just as it's impossible to run a public railway service without subsidy, you can say, how the hell do preservation railways do it? The subsidy comes in terms of free labour, but boy, do we need some help from government. They've got to stop, the amount of rates that we have to pay is phenomenal. Somebody told me the other day that Bluebell Railway is the 2nd largest private landowner in Sussex. In Sussex. I wasn't aware of that. If it's true, imagine the amount of rates we're paying. It is phenomenal. Yeah. So I didn't answer your question, but that gives you the measure of it. It's very expensive, yeah.
Am I right in thinking that you're also going to be threatened with what I would classify as stupid emission controls on running your locomotives?
The government took a step backwards in their legislation, so we haven't got to do as we have as private individuals, and we have to burn only processed coal. The railways have exemption from that and can burn real coal, but often governments don't help us out there. Railway coal has been coming from near to Merthyr Tydfil, which is an open cast mine. It's a mine that's been there for a long, long time, and it was a main supplier for a coal-fired power station. And on the side, they sold a lot of coal for steam locomotives. They can only operate by means of a licence from the Welsh government. The Welsh government has refused them the licence to continue, because that was the green thing to do. Was it the green thing to do? That's what they say, but it wasn't, because the coal we buy now comes from halfway around the world. What does that do to the environment? And it's poor quality coal. It's mucky coal. Government doesn't help us at all. If I could give I'd love to give a talk on how government has, what's the polite words, messed things up throughout the history of railways. They have from the start and they have to the finish. And I can pick on it. They are the mess things up by a refusal to intervene and take responsibility and just say we're not interested, or they mess it up by intervening in a very wrong way. I don't think this happens in other countries in Europe. I really don't think it does. I'm not sure that answers the question either. But
You most likely just agree with me.
Yeah.
Malcolm, I think you're being a little unfair when you suggest that innovation and electrification stopped with the demise of the Southern Railway. Because its success of the Southern region did pursue all those strategies that the Southern Railway started.
Yeah,
the electrification expanded all over the place.
I agree. I was being somewhat unkind because it did, for some reason did, until eventually all their innovation was drained out of them.
I have a question as well. It was perhaps a silly question, but it intrigued me when you showed Locomotion 1, which was the first engine. On the funnel there was a 54. What was all that about?
I don't know where. I've tried to find. I don't know where that 54 came from and why.
You don't know why?
No.
Was it a mock-up of the Railhill trials? Is that the 54th entrance?
No, because it was actually a mock-up, and it was in the right place of Locomotion 1 on the Stockton Darlington Railway. Okay. So there was no reason on earth to give it a number. Locomotion 1 only had it was number 1. That was it. So what that 54 was about, I do not know. It's very weird. And I've seen that other photographs of the same, and the number is still on the chimney. Yeah, so I don't know why.
Any further questions? At the back.
I've got a flag. I've got to wave it. Anyway, moving on.
Well, it's a relief because people have flattened us if it comes through.
I'm just going to shout out for the volunteers, because I work in the Loco Yard at Sheffield Park, doing all this sort of mechanical stuff, supporting the pay stuff. And it's really great fun. So if any of you not just visit, go and volunteer. And there's all sorts, people
different
can wear
things you can do.
uniforms and stuff. And there's electrical stuff, signals and sticking up the railway lines.
This needs a disclaimer, because I think I said to Mike,
That's not what
he said, how do you get involved with the Bluebell Railway? And I said, well, it's like going to Brighton for a paddle. Before you know it, you're swimming the English Channel. And that's what it's like. Because it's quite addictive. It's a bit like driving a steam engine. It's quite addictive. You do it once, you want to do it again and again and again. Also, being in a railway, you get drawn in because it's such a fascinating, it's a business. Let's face it, it is a business. And it's a fascinating business. It's got no right to survive. It really hasn't. You look at the economics of it, the absurdity of it. But it does, and it survives. And once you get involved in it, you cannot pull away. So anyone wants to volunteer, just come and see me. And especially when I volunteer in the museum. Yeah, we're very keen to hear you. And one of the things that I'm pushing is that we've had one thing that's held railways back, is that we've had enthusiasts that we hope are capable to run the business. That has been the way that we've gone about it. And the world's got to change, because what we want as volunteers is capable people who we hope will become enthusiasts. That way round, we've got a better chance of survival and thriving. So capable people is what we need, not enthusiasts who might be capable.
Okay, if there's no more questions, I would go through the wind-up. And first of all, as a mark of appreciation for the talk, Malcolm, we've got some various bits. One is a certificate. Normally we say to prove to your wife that you were actually here.
She's here today.
And the other one or two bits of IET.
Oh, that's very kind of you.
So we're giving you some IET advertisements, and you've
Thank
given
you,
us
Mike.
some very nice advertisements for the Bluebell Railway.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for a really excellent talk.
My pleasure.